to St. Matthew, the 17th chapter. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the Beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The Gospel of our Lord. Please be seated. I have always found the story of the Transfiguration to be a strange story. It is filled with odd things. And, well, let's be honest, it really doesn't quite fit here. If you were to go back to the end of chapter 16 and skip right ahead to chapter 17, verse 10, it was like nothing happened. It flows from one piece to the other. But somehow in the middle of this, Matthew has inserted this strange story. And it's strange in a lot of ways. Some of it's probably just the way I think. But I always wondered, why did Jesus only take Peter, James, and John? Why not the rest of the 12? I mean, this is a transforming experience. This is a faith-transforming experience. This is a life-transforming experience. Why did only those 3 get to experience it? I don't know. It makes no sense to me. I mean, you have 12 disciples. Why not take all of them up to the mountaintop with you? Why not share this mighty moment with all of them? Why just those 3? Strange to me. I don't have an answer for it. It has always bothered me. But anyway, they go up the mountain with Jesus, and look what happens. I mean, it's very strange, right? Jesus glows. His face shines like the sun. His clothes become dazzling white. He looks wholly different. He is literally beaming with divine glory. That's a lot to take in. Can you imagine seeing that? Can you imagine what that would look like? I can't. I've never seen anything like that. Imagine if you're those 3 disciples, though, and you're seeing this incredibly strange, but what is happening to Jesus? What is going on here? What is this? And all of a sudden, 2 men are there with Jesus. And they're talking with him. Matthew tells us that those are Moses and Elijah, who have been off of the earth for something like 1,000 years. And there they are. Very strange. Of course, there's Peter. I love Peter. He's my favorite apostle. He is you and me. He's the everyman. Every woman. He's us. If we were there, we would be Peter. Because let's pretend that we are up there. And you are seeing this. Jesus radiating God's glory. Think back to the reading from Exodus and what that was like for Moses. It was terrifying to experience the glory of God up close and personal. But there is Jesus in all of that divine glory with these other 2 beings talking to him. Imagine what you would be like. You would be one of 2 things, either stunned into absolute silence, or you would be like Peter and you would babble. I'd babble. I would just be like, I got to say something here. Peter has to say something. And so he says, well, it's good for us to be here. No kidding. Let's state the obvious, shall we? And then this is the part my teacher always used to ask about this. How How did he know they were Moses and Elijah? How did Peter know that's who they were? Has he ever seen a picture of them? Of course not. There weren't any. It's not like there were Moses bubblegum cards floating around that he could have had in his pocket since he was a kid. But they wore jerseys. You know, now playing left field, Moses, and he's got his name on his back. No, how did he know? This is a strange story, full of strange things. He says, let's build 3 houses. Would you like me to build 3 houses for you? One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Is that just, you know, what else do we do but get busy, right? When in doubt, build something. Or did he mean it as an act of worship? There's a festival called the Festival of Booths in Judaism. And one of the things you do as a way of worshiping is you actually build yourself a separate little wooden house and go live in it for a week. And it's a festival of the law. Well, Moses, law, yeah. Maybe he's really drifted into like, I'm going to become super devout at this moment. We need to do the Festival of Booths right here because Moses is here. And what else would I do in the presence of Moses but honor the law? Maybe that's what he's saying. It doesn't matter. Because here's the part that really gets me. God cuts him off. While he's still speaking, the cloud comes down and the voice speaks. Can you imagine getting cut off by God? Can you imagine you're talking and God just drops by and says, shut up? Can you imagine that? Getting cut off by, maybe, Lord, I don't know. Yeah, it's a terrifying moment, wouldn't you think? God has spoken while you're talking. Whose voice is more important in that second, yours or God's? God's, obviously. So, yes, the voice comes, and there's only one response, right? When you hear the voice of God in that form, in that fashion, with the cloud covering you, it's a booming voice by all. As far as we can tell, it is a booming voice. God don't whisper in these moments. They do what every one of us would have done. They fall down because they're terrified. Absolutely terrified. I would be. I'm serious. If at this moment, as I'm standing here preaching, a cloud came through the ceiling and covered us all up, and the voice of God literally cut me off and started talking, I'm on the ground. And I'm face down because I ain't worthy. I don't belong in this moment. And they know it. And if it was me, I would know it. And I'm reckoning if it was you, you would know it too. You suddenly realize this is out of your pay grade. This is beyond what you've ever imagined you could have in life. And terror will overcome you. Because always you have been taught that to see God is to die. And you are about to see God. Maybe you already have seen God. You don't know. But you know in that second, this is not where you need to be. Because it is overwhelming, and it is terrifying, and it is just beyond everything you could ever think. It's a crazy, strange story of a crazy, strange event that only these 3 disciples ever saw. And the most remarkable thing is that they do remember it. I know Jesus says when they're coming on the mountain, don't tell anybody about this, but you know that would have been really hard. Could you keep that to yourself? In this day and age, could you keep that for yourself, or would you be on your phone in 3.5 seconds, posting somewhere, somehow, look what I just saw? What would have been the temptation trying to grab a photo with your cell phone, huh? Don't tell a soul what you just saw. Well, they keep quiet for a while, but eventually they do tell, right? And it's in all 3, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They all recount this story in almost exactly the same form. It's almost an identical story in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It was so important to the early church that all of those gospel writers remembered it and included it as a fundamentally important piece of their story. That story becomes so foundationally important for the Christian church that by the time 2 Peter gets written, and he needs some proof of the authority of what he has been preaching. Because the issue in 2 Peter is that the teaching of the church is being challenged by other folks who say it is, in the words of Peter, a cleverly devised myth. You're making all this stuff up so you can gain control of us. and get us to do what you want us to do. That's the accusation being made. And Peter's answer is, no, this comes directly from God, and the proof of it is, we were on the mountaintop, and we heard the voice of God. So we aren't the ones who are saying Jesus is the Son of God. God told us. We have this straight from God, and we got it straight from God on the holy mountaintop at the Transfiguration. Imagine how powerful that would be. The apostles ain't making this stuff up. They got it straight from God. That's some weight, isn't it? I mean, when you want to back up what you're saying, how about God said it first? That's a lot of weight. And this is what they went to. They didn't go to any other story. They didn't go to any other incident from the life of Jesus. They didn't go to the cross. They didn't go to the resurrection. They didn't go to any of his brilliant teachings. They said, we were on the mountaintop. This is an important story for the early church. It is how they convince others of the truth of what they're saying. How does Peter put it? I love how he puts it there. So we have the prophetic message more fully confirmed by the voice of God himself. The message of Scripture was confirmed to us on the mountaintop because God said so. Argue with God, not me. See what happens. This strange, bizarre, who can understand it, who can make sense of it, who can visualize its story, is the proof of everything that we say. Because God said so. And they were there. They were ear witnesses. The voice of God. Wow. It's weird and it's strange, but wow. How important for these three. I mean, that was life-changing for them, wasn't it? That it confirms for them everything else that is said. Of course, they're still lying face down on the ground, terrified in the story. They're still terrified at that moment. And that's where something wonderful happens. And I think for us here today, it's probably the most important other thing we can take from this story. They're on the ground. They're terrified. They don't know what to do. They probably got their hands over their heads. They're cowering. They don't know what to do and what happens. In the midst of their terror, in the midst of their fear, in the midst of their confusion and anxiety and every other emotion they could possibly be feeling, they feel a hand on their shoulders. And it's Jesus. And he touches them. And he says, get up. Don't be afraid. And they open their eyes. They're still laying down, if you notice. They have not gotten up, but they open their eyes. And it's just Jesus. Standing there just normal. The important thing in all of this, throughout this whole experience for them and for us, everything that we experience, is that Jesus was there. They're terrified. They're laying flat on the ground, shaking. And they feel the touch of Jesus. Every time Jesus touches someone in Matthew, it's to heal them. Every time Jesus touches someone, it's to heal them. And he touches them. And they feel that healing power, taking away their fear, taking away that anxiety. It's okay. You're good. Because I'm here with you. He says, get up. He says, rise up. Be raised. He uses resurrection language. Rise up. It's okay. You don't need to be afraid. I'm here. When they go up the mountain, Jesus is there. When they are confronted by that awesome spectacle of the divine majesty and all of its majesty, and the impossible vision of Moses and Elijah, Jesus is there. And when they're laying on the ground, cowering in fear because they've seen the unimaginable, Jesus is there. And he leads them back down the mountain. And he's there. And they get back down to the valley, and Jesus is there. And there's a man saying, "Help my son," and Jesus is there. And he's there with them throughout the rest of his time with them. And he takes them to the garden, and he's with them. And finally, at the end of the gospel, he takes them up another mountain. And the last thing he says to his disciples is, "I will always be with you. I will always be there for you. I will always be there with you." That's the promise. That's the gift. That's the blessing of all of this. Jesus is there. When we're climbing up the mountain and things are going great and we're just on that ascent and it's glorious and wonderful, Jesus is there. And when you are blessed enough to be on top of the mountain and experience the divine power of God touching you and fully experience the glory of God at that moment in your life, hallelujah, one thing, Jesus is there. Because the only way you can experience the divine is through Jesus. And the divine comes to you is through Jesus. When you start coming down the mountain and it's just your normal day, routine stuff, I got up this morning, got dressed, I went downstairs and I have an old cat. She's not in the best of health anymore, and sometimes overnight she don't make it to the litter box. And I get down on my knees and I clean the floor, and Jesus is there. And I drive to church here, and I lead worship, and I teach my confirmation class, and I'm here with you all, and Jesus is here too. And Jesus is here with every one of us, and he'll be with us when we leave and go about our day, whatever our day entails. Jesus will be there. The ordinariness of our lives, Jesus is there. And those times when you go down deep into the valley, it's dark, you don't know where you are, maybe you're scared, maybe you're afraid, maybe you're lonely, maybe you want to lay on the ground and cover your head with your arms because you're so afraid. You don't know which way is up, you don't know which way is down, and you feel that hand upon your shoulder because Jesus is there, touching you, saying to you, "Rise up, because I'm here. I'm always here. I'm always with you. So rise up. Do not be afraid, because Jesus is with you." Up the mountain, down the mountain, on top of the mountain, darkest valley, brightest day. Jesus is there. Jesus is here. Jesus is with you always, to the end of the age.